So what is a thesis statement? This is the point that you want to prove to the three topics, aka your body paragraph, topic, sentences. This is the last sentence of the introduction paragraph that maps out what issues you will want to analyze and rebuttal or counter in the paper. So here's the tip. Look at your essay prompt. What topics need to be addressed? Here's an example. Prompt number 1 for 10th graders is, does race and class interfere with the younger's dreams? And you could lay out your topics for your thesis statement, like the example below. Number 1, race interferes with the younger's dreams. Number 2, class interferes with the younger's dreams. And then your rebuttal or counter argument, or your third body paragraph, is where you would analyze and argue or refute how race and class do not interfere with the younger's dreams. A thesis statement is contestable, supportable, clear, and consistent. So your thesis statement should be arguable, meaning there's another opinion or perspective that the audience can have. There should also be evidence to support your side and the claims that you're making in your paper. It should also be clear. The three topics that you're going to be talking about in your thesis statement should be present, just like the previous example. And lastly, it should be consistent. Everything in the essay connects back to this thesis statement and supports to prove your claim. We're going to move on to appeals. So this is a new layer to essay writing that we may have not gone over in class. There's three types of appeals: logos, ethos, and pathos. The types of appeals coined by Greek philosophers, methods of persuasion used by speakers and writers to convince their audience. The first appeal, logos, uses logic and reason to persuade. The second one, ethos, uses credibility or reliable sources to persuade. And the third and last one, pathos, uses emotional response or emotions to persuade. Now I want you to watch this short video on ethos, logos, and pathos. It's about like 1 to 2 minutes. So pause this video, go over to the next module, and click the link for this short video. So one of the goals for this essay is that I want you to incorporate one of these three appeals into your writing. This is actually a very subtle and passive process, and it's not necessarily direct in your paper, as you might say, I'm using logos right here. So it's not very obvious at first. There are a few ways you can go about this. One way is that you could choose quotes based on an appeal. So if your character uses a lot of pathos, for example, there might be a character who uses a lot of emotional responses. So in A Raisin in the Sun, one of the characters, Mama, often uses emotional appeal to convince her children of her ideas or what she's expressing. In Dear America, Jose Vargas often uses credibility or reliable sources to make sure that his undocumented status doesn't affect his journalism. So that's a way that you could use ethos in the sense of the first bullet point, choosing your quotes based on an appeal. Next, you could explain in your analysis or commentary. You might not necessarily be as direct as, this shows ethos because, but you might argue or analyze why a character is being more emotional in the evidence that you're providing. In the third bullet point, in your rebuttal or counter argument paragraph, you might explain why the author, the passage you provided, or the character's appeal is flawed or incorrect. So if the character makes an emotional appeal or pathos, you can argue why a logical persuasion would have worked better for that character. Another way that you could do this, which isn't written on here, is that you could interweave one or maybe even all three of these appeals throughout your essay. And that's something that's a little more advanced, but for now, I'm only asking that you really incorporate at least one of these appeals into your writing. So lastly, there's no one way to write an introduction. Right here is a list of various ways that you could write an introduction. Many of these 9 or 10 tools that are here are actually some things that I've mentioned in the previous slides. You can read this on your own time and see that maybe if you want to use one of these different tools, there's many different ways to write an introduction paragraph. We're going to pause here, and I want you to use the Google form for the check for understanding. Answer these 2 questions. What makes a good thesis statement? Check all that apply. And then provide an example of when Jose uses logos, ethos, or pathos to argue, express, lie, hide, take action, anything else that he does. Use an example from the book and cite it properly.